So now we're going to move on to our next presentation. So Judi, can you say hello?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast. I'm currently in Las Vegas, so it's still the AM here, but thank you very much for having me join you all today. I'm a little different in terms of my presentation style. It's going to be mostly a photo presentation that I'll run through, but just to give you a little background about me. My name's Judi Weiss. I'm a remote operations manager and the remote operations manager for ESPN's college studio shows, which include College Game Day, football and basketball, and any other college studio shows that come up. So I started my career about 30 years ago as a coordinator, but it even goes further back than that as a runner. My first event was Live Aid in 1985. So I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen the industry change over the years. Right now, on the webinar with us is actually my mentor and colleague for many years, who's taught me a lot and who broke a lot of those glass ceilings so that I could get to where I am today. But anyway, I decided to speak about people, passion, persistence, because so much of what I do in my career and a good deal of credit to my success centers around this theme. But then I kind of thought about it and indulged me, even though people, passion, persistence rolls off the tongue nicely. I'm going to change things up and talk about persistence, passion, and people, which embodies the natural order of how I get things done. For almost 30 years, I've made a career out of working behind the scenes in remote sports broadcasting. I've worked my way up the ladder, as I mentioned, as a runner and production assistant for numerous companies. And then I got my big break freelancing, or more appropriately in my case, permalancing, for ABC Sports back in 1998. In 2014, I accepted a staff position as a senior operations producer for ESPN and ABC. That has brought me to my current job as an operations manager. Most people, when they hear about the shows I've worked on, are in awe. Of course, the usual first questions are, what are the talent like on your show? Or, how did I get my job? Next slide, please. Well, to be honest and fully transparent, I was one of those kids who had a parent in the industry, and that helped me get my foot in the door. I was very lucky, but luck only gets you in the door once, especially in very competitive industries such as broadcasting. I can guarantee, and I know from experience, having an in did not keep the door open. It took a lot of hard work and finding my voice to get where I am today. When I began, there were very few women in doing what I was doing. In many instances, I worked on remotes where I was the only woman. Yet through it all, I never thought of it as an obstacle. I liked what I was doing, what I was working on. And where you're only as good as your last show, I found my footing. My bosses were happy with my performance, and I kept getting called back and promoted. My dad, who's in the photo, in the bottom left, had been in broadcasting, and he instilled in us a passion for working in the industry. He went on to be a caterer, but was also the first remote caterer in the industry back in 1972. He catered the conventions on Miami Beach, and so started the path for all of us to be exposed to sports broadcasting at an early age. If you look at the top corner, there's a TV guide and a picture of a little baby. Well, that's me, because for some reason the universe provides, and my parents, when I was born, That was my birth announcement. So I was always destined to be in broadcasting. Maybe they thought at the time I was the world's most amazing baby, so it would be in front of the camera, but I'm pretty comfortable being behind the camera at this point. And then, of course, the other pictures are of my family, who was the last speakers. So adequately mentioned, there are a lot of sacrifices when it comes to being a working mom. And my husband and my daughter have been first ones to witness everything from the stresses and the successes in my career. And I'm very grateful to them. Next slide. In speaking today, I scrubbed my resume. I haven't written a thesis or published a book on this topic. I can only share my own experience in the field. Out of the 100 remotes, and I've worked on hundreds of remotes, from figure skating, I've worked on 9 Olympics, college football, IRL. But the one that I have the most passion about is College Game Day. I've been with the show now for going into my 14th season. At first, I was the operations producer, which meant that I was the first one on site and the last one on site. We are the conduit to the locations we go to. We connect people in our group with the counterparts at the universities and locations we went to. So our legal team was in contact with the university's legal team. It was my responsibility to get those people talking, and very early on. For those of you who aren't familiar with College Game Day, it's ESPN's #1 remote studio show. It's been on the air for 30 years. It's a unique show, and it's evolved from the days of 3 talent and a couple of cameras to weekly. We now have 9 semi trucks on the road, 2 Prevost buses, and 2 Sprinter vans. I oversee a crew of 70 people who week in and week out go to a different location. We don't know where we're going, and sometimes we go to places that we've never been to. The decision is made on Saturday night after all the college football games have played out. And what's interesting about that is 3 days later, 9 semi trucks show up at a location, build out 4 stages, 4 LED screens, and are ready to broadcast to the world by Friday morning. Next slide, please. As you can see here, I'm very passionate about my job. Again, encompasses a lot of things: new technology, building sets, getting locations such as South Beach, Loomis Park for our CFP pregame shows, and stewardship. I take all of these very seriously, and I wear many hats on this job. Next slide, please. When I started on College Game Day, there were all of 3 women on the show: myself, a makeup artist, and Erin Andrews. Over the years, we've grown, and the top left picture is the most recent photo of the 18 women that now work on the show. There are actually 20, 2 were absent, but 18 are in this photo. I'm really proud of that. It's taken a lot of time and commitment on the part of many people to bring in more women into our industry. Currently in our truck, I've got an audio comms technician, an AD, we have talent on the set, we have a operations manager, production manager, coordinator, stage managers, all in the field putting this show on the air, and I'm really proud. I've worked with other women throughout the years in the industry, and I can say it's really refreshing to see more and more women getting involved. Next slide. A lot of women, more men, and I've loved working with all of them. I've learned a lot from all the men I've worked with over the years. As I mentioned, when I first got started, I worked on shows where I was the only woman. That was not unusual back in the late 90s and certainly before I got in the industry. Now it's a little less usual, and I'm happy to see that. We do have fun though, and it's a hard job. It's hard to explain other than to give you the timeline. So as I said, we find out where we're going Saturday night. If we've never been to a location, we go and do a site survey on Sunday morning. First call is usually to our drivers to let them know where we've got to go. And they've got about 2 to 3 days to get there. And anybody who's familiar with the show and has seen the show go from Georgia, from the University of Georgia to the University of Washington, a lot of times people ask me, well, is there an A crew and a B crew? There is no A and B crew. There is a crew. So the same trucks go from location to location for 15 straight weeks. We're kind of like the Postal Service. We deliver, whether it's windy, sunny, hot, rainy, minus 15, plus 105 degrees, we work. And it's because of the passion that all of us have for what we bring to the audience week in and week out that I think has, I'd say about 60% of this crew has now worked 10 plus years on the show. And there are several people on the show who are at 20 plus years. And we do have one original staffer from back when College Game Day was at Notre Dame, and they played, Notre Dame played FSU at the time. So it's really special to see people committed to a show for 20 plus and 30 years. In the picture on the bottom of right is where we were when we were in Georgia. And we were trying to, it was Veterans Day weekend, and we showed tribute to the troops. And we just try to always support everybody, whether it's a holiday or a celebration, a birthday. The top right corner is something called Roadkill Grill. The history of Roadkill Grill is that our crew get very little time on Friday to break away to take a nice meal break. And so the drivers by Friday, who have already been in town a couple of days, started grilling hot dogs and hamburgers for the crew about 20 something years ago. And this has grown into, it's got a reputation. It's been featured on The Chew, if you remember the TV show The Chew. And it's also been written up in Sports Illustrated. We now go to our locations with lots of people, lots of our contacts at the universities asking if we're going to do a roadkill grill. And that just goes to show it's a testament of how much our drivers care for the crew who take over once the equipment arrives. Also, bottom left, as I said, people always ask me if I ever meet and talk to talent and how they are. Well, I did get to meet one of my all-time favorite athletes, and that's Dwayne Wade. Super guy. Last year when we were at the men's Final Four for College Game Day basketball, we do the announcement for the Naismith Hall of Fame awards, and he was going to be inducted in the fall, and he came out to our show, and I was so shy. I didn't want to go up to him and say anything. I'm not one of those people who starstruck and ask for pictures. So my colleague did it, and he went up to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, where is she?" And it's hard to see in this picture, but my mouth is like wide open. I was so in shock and so in awe. Even after all these years of working with so many wonderful talent professionals, even I get a little starstruck. Next slide, please. So there you have it, the culmination of 15 weeks not knowing where we're going most of the time, getting there, building out 4 sets with 9 semis, 4 screens, all the audio, video, lighting, monitors, almost 10 hours of TV in a 24-hour period. There are rewards to what we do. And I'm privileged to say that I've got 8 Emmys from this show, 5 from the content side and 3 from the technical side. The technical submissions every year are something I take a lot of pride in working on with an editor and with the crew. We put it together as a collaboration. And in 2017, 18, and 20, our technical team, they were recognized as outstanding technical team by the National Academy of Television Arts. And that's all I have for you folks today. I'm open for questions, and thank you for having me.
Judi, thank you so much. And Judi, I'm going to go back one slide. I have to show everybody bottom left right side. That is the Myers Quad at the University of Georgia. And if you look back there, you can see the dorm where I lived my freshman year of college. So
Right.
So that's where I lived. So yes, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. And as a reminder, if anybody would like to ask any live questions, please go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can unmute you. But I'll start with this one question that came from Opal. And Opal says, did you experience any gender resistance when you began working in football?
I have to say, it's actually hard to say, but yes, I didn't realize it at the time. I think now, in retrospect, you know, whether I was treated differently when I was the only woman on a show, you know, called sweetheart or darling or dear or whatever, always a little shoulder rub. At the time, I didn't even think about it as something that was intrusive, but now, certainly, anytime anybody on the crew goes to maybe give me a hug or something, I fist bump. I happen to be a very small, petite woman, and for years, you know, people would say to me, "Why do you yell?" And I'd be like, "I'm not yelling. It's just that I'm so small that I didn't feel that people always heard me." So I tend to project a lot. I don't know if you'd call that gender resistance, but yeah, probably. But at the time, I never really internalized it. It wasn't an obstacle. I persisted. Certainly in this job, persistence, persistence, persistence. It's the name of the game. You can't move forward with 9 semi trucks by just sitting back and waiting for somebody to call and ask, you know, the questions. You have to present the show to the location where you're going week in and week out.
So Dory asked, and you don't have to answer this question, but Dory says, what is your favorite place to visit for game day?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I went to Penn State. So, of course, you know, I have a little bias about going to Penn State.
Yeah.
That is the absolute one of the least favorite places for my crew to go, because finding a hotel room in the State College area is next to impossible. And they always have to drive about 40 minutes to an hour to get to work. I also love the University of Washington. I have a very special place in my heart for that school. It's one of the first locations, if not the only location I've ever been to on game day, where we worked with an all-female group of organizers. If you go back a couple of slides, there's a picture of the women, and I'm wearing all the UW. There they are. We're kind of in that position if like we're about to run the marathon. Well, we did run the marathon that weekend. But that's a very special group of ladies. And it was the first time. They were all women, you know, everybody in athletics that we dealt with. And it was wonderful. And I love going out there for sure.
I think we have time for one more question, and we'll ask you for some final thoughts. Another question says, what about burnout? Do you also do basketball? How do you keep going through all those long days?
Persistence, passion, and the people. Yeah, I am burned out. I no longer work on the road week in and week out. And I mentioned earlier, I worked on figure skating for 10 years. And if you can imagine, and I was also, close to what was that, 15 years ago. So 15 years younger than I am now. But getting on an airplane, flying to China, getting back on an airplane, flying to Russia, going home, getting ready for the next show, maybe flying back out to a European country or to the West Coast. I remember when I was at the Olympics in China, getting on conference calls for my first college football game. And I had to get on the calls because, like, the day after I was getting home from China, I was headed to the University of Virginia for a college football game. College game day, I was at the Rose Bowl for the college football championship. And 3 days later, after I got home, I went to Sochi for 7 weeks. So, yeah, a lot of burnout. And that's when I had to go. I actually went to my supervisors a couple of years ago and told them I didn't think I had another 20 years left in me to just stay on the road like that. And the opportunity to become a manager came up, and I don't have to travel as much. I still travel, but definitely not as much. But I never thought about it. I just kept going. And I think it really is a credit to the people I worked with over the years. They were just wonderful. And, there's a real rush working on a show like College Game Day.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. So, as we close, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for all of our viewers?
Find your passion, stick with it, embrace it. Don't get discouraged. For women, absolutely find your voice early on. Stake your ground, and keep doing what you love, and it'll pay off for
Well,
sure.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story today.